Before we begin, drop a comment below with your country and what time it is right now where you're watching. Whether it's sunrise in Nairobi, midnight in New York, afternoon in Canada, or evening in France, I want to know. Don't just sit back. Tell me where in the world you are. Now, let's dive into the story. Snow burned Eloanvalia's knees as she knelt in the open pass, the wind screaming so loud it swallowed her sobs whole. Her fingers were numb, split, red, yet she kept dragging frozen bodies closer together. 15 wolves lay scattered like broken statues, ribs sharp, fur crusted with ice, breath thin and uneven. Behind her, Hearthfen Crossing glowed warm and distant, windows bright with safety and judgment. She heard laughter drift across the snow, brittle and cruel, followed by voices calling her foolish, cursed, packless. Eloan bowed her head, not in shame, but in stubborn refusal to stop. She wrapped her own cloak around the smallest wolf, pressed her palms to a heaving chest, and whispered apologies into the storm. The sky hung low and gray, heavy with punishment. Her stomach cramped with hunger, her legs shook with exhaustion. Still she stayed. The cold gnawed deeper, eating thought, memory, pride. She prayed without words, only breath and pain. Then the ground beneath her knees trembled, softly at first, like a heartbeat waking after long sleep, and the wind suddenly fell silent around her. The silence broke when a massive shape moved. Ice slid from dark fur in cracking sheets as the largest wolf stirred. Eloan gasped, scrambling back, heart slamming against her ribs. Blue eyes open, sharp and aware, nothing like an animal's panic. They locked onto her face with terrifying clarity. Around them, the others twitched, breath deepening, bodies pulling heat from the ground itself. Fear screamed at her to run, but her legs refused. The great wolf rose unsteadily, blood dark against white snow, pain rolling from him in waves she felt in her bones. Eloan tore her last clean bandage, crawled forward, and pressed it to his wound with shaking hands. He did not bite. He lowered his massive head instead, breath warm against her wrists, and released a low sound that rippled outward. The pack stilled. Snow drifted down gently, as if listening. Eloan felt something unseen settle around her, heavy and protective. She did not know she had crossed a line no human ever should. She only knew the cold loosened its grip, and warmth bloomed where terror had lived moments before. Metal clinked sharply, shattering the moment. Eloan twisted as men burst from the trees, torches flaring orange against the white world. Warden Caith Rowan's voice cut through the air, triumphant and sharp, ordering chains readied and spears raised. Villagers followed, faces hard with fear turned into cruelty. Eloan staggered to her feet and spread her arms wide, placing herself between steel and fur without thinking. "They're dying," she shouted, throat raw. "Please!" Laughter answered her. A chain snapped around her wrist, biting deep. Pain flashed bright, dragging her to her knees. The wolves surged forward, forming a trembling wall. 15 bodies standing despite wounds and hunger. The great wolf stepped ahead of them all, placing himself squarely in front of Eloan. His presence pressed down like gravity. Caith hesitated, spear wavering. "Move," he barked. The wolf answered with a sound that was not a sound at all, but command. Trees bowed, snow lifted. Eloan felt it echo inside her chest, ancient and absolute. She realized then these were no monsters. They were something far worse to men who feared losing control. The first spear flew anyway. The world erupted into chaos. The great wolf leapt faster than thought, slamming into the attackers. Shouts turned to screams. Eloan cried out as blood sprayed across the snow, unsure whose it was. She clawed at the chain, panic choking her, screaming for them to stop. The pack fought with desperate precision, protecting each other, circling her instinctively. Caith stumbled back, face pale, authority cracking. Eloan met the great wolf's eyes again through the storm of movement. They burned brighter now, fierce and focused, and somehow gentle only for her. He shook his head once sharply, urging her away. She refused, shaking her own head, tears freezing on her lashes. "I won't leave you," she shouted, voice breaking. The ground trembled harder. A roar tore from the mountain itself, rolling outward in a wave that knocked men flat and shattered courage like glass. The wolves froze mid-motion. Elowen's heart hammered painfully as the sound echoed again, closer, deeper, layered with power that made the air vibrate. When the echo faded, silence crashed down heavier than snow. The men fled, dropping weapons, terror overruling orders. Chains fell loose from Elowen's wrist. She sagged forward, barely caught by steady hands as the great wolf shifted before her eyes, bone reshaped, fur receded. In its place stood a man, tall and scarred, breath ragged, dark hair loose around a face carved by cold restraint. Blue eyes met hers, blazing and weary. Elowen could not breathe. He steadied her carefully, as if she were made of glass. "Run," he said, voice low and urgent. She shook her head, stunned, tears spilling. "No." Something unreadable crossed his face, fierce and almost pained. He straightened, turning toward the retreating hunters, power rolling off him in waves that bent the snow beneath his feet. Elowen understood nothing except that she had saved lives meant to rule her world. And now, standing beside him, she had no idea the Alpha King had just revealed himself to her alone. Elowen woke to dripping water and the ache of cold leaving her bones in slow waves. Stone surrounded her, dark and breathing, lit by a small fire that snapped softly. She lay on layered furs, clean and warm, her cloak folded nearby, boots drying by the heat. Panic surged, then memory crashed back. Spears, blood, the man where the wolf had been. She pushed upright and swayed. Strong hands steadied her shoulders, then withdrew at once. "Easy," said a low voice, careful as snow on glass. She looked up at him. He crouched at a distance, tall even kneeling, dark hair loose, eyes blue and watchful, no crown, no guards, only quiet power held tight. "Where am I?" she asked. "Above the Shatter Pine Pass," he answered. "You are safe." Elowen swallowed, scanning the cave mouth. No chains, no doors. Outside, wind whispered. "The wolves?" she asked. His gaze flicked to the fire. "Alive, I mean," he said. Relief hit her hard enough to sting. Tears spilled. She hid her face, embarrassed. He turned away, granting privacy, as if he understood exactly how fragile courage could be. The silence felt kind, steadying her breathing, reminding her she still belonged somewhere after everything shattered. He rose and moved, to the cave mouth, keeping space between them, as if afraid to crowd her. Snowlight spilled in, pale and cold, painting his silhouette against the stone. Elowen studied him in pieces, scars at his wrists, the way his shoulders squared when distant howls answered one another outside. They sounded organized, not wild. "Why help me?" she asked. He paused. "Because you helped us," he said simply. "And because you stayed." She frowned. "Anyone would." He turned, expression unreadable. "No," he replied. He fetched water in a clay cup and held it out, stopping short until she nodded. Their fingers did not touch. "What are you?" Elowen asked, voice small despite herself. His eyes lifted, blue deepening, power pressing gently like a hand on her back. "Someone bound by old laws," he said. "Someone with debts." She drank, heart racing. Outside, the howls shifted, closer now. A shadow passed the cave mouth. Elowen felt watched, but not hunted. "They're guarding," he said, following her gaze. "You." The word landed heavy. "I don't belong to anyone," she said quickly. He inclined his head. "Then neither do we." Warmth spread again, unwelcome and comforting, confusing her resolve despite fear. Sleep took her again, sudden and deep. Dreams came bright as moonlit snowfields. Elowen ran without pain, breath steady, feet silent over drifts that glittered blue. She was not alone. Shapes paced beside her, massive and graceful, their presence a promise rather than a threat. When she woke, fur brushed her cheek. She froze. A wolf lay curled at her side, enormous and warm, eyes open and gentle. Another rested near her feet. Then more, a ring of bodies breathing slow. Panic flared, then faded under a strange calm. The cave felt like a heart, beating steadily around her. Kale stood at the entrance, back turned, giving her dignity. "They will not harm you," he said quietly. "They chose you." Elowen pushed herself upright. "For what?" she asked. The wolves did not answer. One lifted its head, ears pricked, listening. Outside, boots crunched faintly. Kale's shoulders tightened. "We cannot stay," he said. "Hunters will return." He met her eyes, urgency sharpening his calm. "If you leave now, you may still walk away untouched." Elowen looked at the wolves, at the fire, at him. "And if I don't?" she asked. Snow hissed outside, answering with a warning rather than mercy tonight. They moved fast. Elowen wrapped herself tighter as Kale led her through a narrow cleft, wolves melting into shadows ahead and behind. The mountain felt awake, listening to their footfalls. Wind carried distant shouts, the clatter of metal, the barking courage of men who feared the dark. Elowen stumbled once, caught instantly by Kale's hand. Heat flared where he touched her, brief and startling. He released her at once. "I'm sorry," he said, as if the contact itself were dangerous. They descended into a pine bowl glazed with ice. Torches flickered far below. "They're searching," Elowen whispered. "They will not find us," Kale said, though tension edged his voice. A wolf brushed past her leg, steadying her. She realized they were adjusting their pace to hers. Shame and gratitude tangled tight. At the tree line, Kale stopped. "If you turn back," he said, "I will ensure safe passage." Elowen shook her head, breath clouding. "I won't be safe if I go back," she replied. He studied her, something like respect dawning. "Then choose quickly," he said. The horns sounded again. Closer now. Elowen stepped forward without looking back. The wolves followed, silent witnesses to a decision that changed everything forever. They reached a hidden ravine where frostbitten stones curved like ribs around shadow. Kale halted, raising a fist. The pack stilled instantly. "This is as far as I can pretend," he said quietly. Elowen frowned. "Pretend what?" He faced her, fully, moonlight catching scars she had not seen. "That you are only a kindness, wake espay," he said. The words cut deeper than he intended. "I didn't do it for reward," she said, anger sparking. "I know," he replied. It meant something heavier. A howl rose, not from the pack, but far away, answering horns with authority. Kale closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, the mountain seemed to lean closer. "If you stay," he said, "you will be hunted by men and claimed by wolves." Elowen's heart pounded. "Claimed how?" He hesitated, then bowed his head. "As ours." Silent stretched. Elowen breathed in pine and cold and fear. She thought of Hearthfin's windows, of laughter, of chains. She lifted her chin. "Then stop pretending," she said. Kale looked up, startled. Power rolled, undeniable now. "Very well," he said. "Then know this." He stepped aside, revealing the pack. Heads lowered to her. "You saved 15 lives," he said. "And one. Thrown." Elowen did not bow when the wolves lowered their heads. She stepped back, breath shallow, mind racing. The ravine felt smaller, the night pressing close as if listening. Kale watched her with a careful stillness that felt like restraint wrapped around a storm. "A throne?" she asked, disbelief sharp. He nodded once. "Not tonight," he said. "But it breathes, and it remembers." Voices echoed faintly below, men arguing, boots slipping. Elowen's pulse thudded. "I didn't save anyone for crowns," she said. "I saved them because they were freezing." Kale's mouth tightened. "That is why it answered you." He gestured to the pack. One wolf stepped forward, placing a paw at her feet, head bowed. The gesture pierced her chest with a strange ache. "I won't be owned," she said. Cal inclined his head. Nor will you be. Wind carried the scent of iron and pitch. Cale turned sharply. They've split into groups, he murmured. We move now, he signaled, and the wolves flowed into motion, silent as breath, forming a living corridor that waited for her choice. Snow sifted down, erasing tracks, while the ravine held its breath, offering no mercy, only a narrow, watching path forward into darkness ahead. They climbed through a slot of rock glazed with ice. Cale taking point, Elowen in the middle, wolves guarding the rear. The passage opened onto a shelf overlooking the white silence, a storm basin infamous for swallowing sound. Cale raised a hand, and the pack halted. Listen, he whispered. Elowen strained, hearing nothing, then a tremor beneath it, like distant drums. What is that? She asked. A call, Cale said, not ours. His jaw set. The council hunts tonight. The word council tasted wrong. Elowen followed his gaze to the horizon, where faint blue lights pulsed, unnatural against the snow. They know you, she said. Cale's expression did not change. They know the crown, he replied. They fear it, choosing wrong. A gust tore at Elowen's hood. She grabbed his sleeve without thinking, then released it, flustered. He pretended not to notice. If they find us, she said, they'll kill me. Cale shook his head. They will try to use you. That felt worse. The wolves bristled, hackles lifting, as if the thought itself were poison. Far below, metal rang softly, answering the drums, and the basin swallowed echoes, like a mouth closing around them both without mercy tonight again. They descended as the lights drew closer, Cale guiding them into trees bent low by ice. Elowen's legs burned, lungs aching, but she kept pace, pride stiffening her spine. A wolf pressed briefly against her calf, steadying her step. Gratitude flared, fierce. Shots cracked somewhere distant, sharp as snapped bones. Elowen flinched. Cale hissed a signal, and the pack scattered, reappearing ahead like ghosts. Stay near me, he murmured. She nodded, swallowing fear. They reached a frozen stream where the ice sang underweight. Cale tested it, then crossed, hand out. Elowen took it. Heat surged again, alarming and welcome. Halfway across, a beam of blue light cut through branches. Voices shouted. The ice boomed. Elowen slipped, panic ripping loose. Cale caught her, hauling her upright as cracks raced outward. Wolves leapt, pulling them both. The stream shattered behind them, swallowing light and sound. They lay gasping on the far bank. Elowen laughed, hysterical relief spilling. Cale did not. He stared at the broken ice, jaw tight. They won't stop, he said. Neither will I. Above, the moon slid free of clouds, cold and bright, marking their path with merciless clarity as horns answered again behind them in the dark. They reached a stand of ancient pines where the pack regrouped, breath steaming, eyes fixed outward. Cale spoke quickly, issuing gestures Elowen somehow understood without words. We split, he said. They expect me, visible. Elowen's stomach dropped. You're bait, she said. He met her gaze. I am a shield. She grabbed his arm. No. The wolves murmured, low and tense. Kyle covered her hand with his, firm and steady. Listen to me, he said. If I fall, you run with Malin. She will find you. Who is Malin? Elowen demanded. A female wolf stepped forward and shifted, bones flowing into a tall woman with frost-pale hair and eyes like winter lakes. Me, she said. Elowen reeled. Malin inclined her head, assessing. You smell of courage, she said. In trouble. Kyle's mouth twitched. She's under my protection, he said. Malin's gaze sharpened. Then choose, she replied. The pack or the crown? Cale looked at Elowen, something unguarded breaking through. Both, he said. The forest answered with distant howls, approval and warning intertwined, as snow began falling harder, blurring faces and futures alike under the ancient. Branches around them, waiting for blood or mercy to decide tonight. Again, now, quickly, together. They separated with painful efficiency. Malin took Elowen's arm, pulling her toward shadowed gullies, while Kyle turned toward the lights, shoulders squared. Elowen twisted back. "Kyle," she called. He did not look. The pack melted away, a promise stretched thin. They ran until Elowen's lungs burned and the forest opened onto a stone bowl etched with runes. Malin shoved her behind a pillar. "Stay," she ordered. Elowen peered out. Kyle stepped into open snow, alone. Blue lights flared brighter, voices rising with triumph. A figure advanced, cloaked and cold. "Alpha," the voice called, mocking. Kyle lifted his chin. Power rolled undeniable. Elowen felt it answer inside her chest, a thread pulling tight. The figure smiled. "You chose wrong," it said. Kyle spread his hands. "I chose life." Horns blared, arrows hissed, wolves erupted from the dark. Chaos crashed. Down. Elowen clenched her fists, heart tearing. She knew then she could not be hidden. Whatever she had become tonight demanded witness. She stepped from cover as snow and fire collided, unaware the council had already marked her as the deciding piece. The first arrow flew past her cheek, sealing her fate beyond retreat forever. Loudly, irrevocably, now, here, tonight, alone, chosen. Elowen did not feel the arrow pass her cheek. She felt the air tear, the warning scream of instinct ripping through her chest. Malin swore and yanked her backward just as another shaft buried itself in stone where Elowen's head had been. Chaos swallowed the clearing. Wolves surged from every shadow, bodies slamming into armored figures, snow exploding under claws and boots. Kale moved like a living storm at the center, power radiating outward in controlled waves, knocking attackers flat without touching them. Elowen's heart hammered painfully as she watched him fight without weapons, bare hands, breaking spears, eyes glowing with restrained fury. She understood then why the council feared him. This was not savagery. This was command. Malin shoved Elowen down behind the rune pillar. "Stay alive," she snapped. "That is your task." Elowen pressed her back to cold stone, breath shallow, listening to screams. Metal clatter, the wet thud of bodies hitting snow. Guilt burned. She had drawn this. She had stayed. A shadow loomed. Elowen screamed as a man rounded the pillar, eyes wild, blade raised. She grabbed a loose stone and swung blindly. It connected with his jaw. He fell. She stared, shaking, realizing she had just crossed another line she could never step back over again tonight. The fight shifted suddenly, like a tide turning. Blue lights flared brighter, forming a ring that pushed wolves back with invisible force. Kale staggered, dropping to one knee, breath tearing from him. Elowen surged forward, forgetting Malin's order. "Kyle," she shouted, the sound of her voice cut through the noise. His head snapped up, eyes locking onto hers, shock and something dangerously like fear flashing across his face. "Get back," he roared. Too late. The ground beneath Elowen's feet burned with cold. Runes ignited, crawling with light. She screamed as pressure slammed down, pinning her in place. A tall figure stepped into view, cloaked in frost, white, face hidden by a carved mask. "So," the figure said calmly, "this is the girl." Kyle lunged, stopped short by an unseen wall. Rage shook the air. "Release her," he demanded. The figure tilted its head. "Or what?" It raised a hand, tightening the light around Elowen. Pain lanced through her, not physical but deep, as if something inside her were being pulled forward against its will. Images flashed, wolves dying, storms breaking, crowns shattering. Elowen cried out, clutching her chest, as power she did not understand answered the call. Malin shifted mid-leap, crashing into the cloaked figure with bone-rattling force. The spell faltered. Elowen collapsed, gasping, the world spinning. Wolves poured in, breaking the ring as Kyle tore free and slammed the masked figure into the snow. He ripped the mask away, revealing High Regent Malvier Ashkeld's pale, furious face. "You dare touch what is under my protection," Kale snarled. Malvier laughed, blood on his teeth. "Protection," he spat. You brought her into this. Cale hesitated. That heartbeat was enough. Malvier drove a blade up, piercing Cale's side. Elowen screamed as Cale staggered, blood blooming dark. The wolves howled, a sound of pure grief and fury. Malin dragged Elowen back as Cale dropped to one knee again. Enough, Malvier said, rising unsteadily. The council will have her. He gestured, and the lights surged once more. Cale met Elowen's eyes across the snow. His voice cut through everything. Run, he said. She shook her head violently, sobbing. I won't leave you. His expression softened, devastatingly gentle. You already saved me, he said. Now save them. The wolves closed ranks, forcing Malin and Elowen back into shadow as Kyle rose, bleeding, standing alone between Crown and Council. They ran until Elowen's vision blurred, Malin half carrying her through twisting gullies as horns blared triumphantly behind them. Snow fell thick, muffling sound, smothering stars. Elowen fought Malin's grip, these tears freezing on her face. He's hurt, she choked. He'll die. Malin's jaw clenched. Not tonight, she said, but you will if they take you. They reached a narrow crevice hidden by thorned ice vines. Wolves slipped through, sealing the entrance behind them with shifting stone. Darkness closed in, broken only by breathing and the slow drip of meltwater. Elowen collapsed, shaking uncontrollably. This is my fault, she whispered. Malin knelt, gripping her shoulders. No, she said fiercely. This is the world's fault for punishing mercy. Elowen sobbed, grief tearing loose. She felt something inside her stir again, responding to pain with heat. The runes on the stone walls flickered faintly. Malin noticed, eyes widening. What are you? She whispered. Elowen wiped her face, equally terrified. I don't know, she said. The crevice trembled as distant howls answered, closer now, carrying a promise that Call still lived, and that the council would not stop hunting until one of them broke completely. They waited in the dark, time stretching thin. Elowen pressed her ear to stone, listening for footsteps, for howls, for Cale's voice. At last, movement stirred the entrance. Wolves shifted stone aside, revealing snow and blood, and Cale leaning heavily between two pack members. Elowen surged forward with a cry. He collapsed to his knees, caught by her arms. She pressed her hands to his wound, heat pouring from her palms without thought. Blue light flared softly, knitting. Torn flesh under her touch. Cale gasped, eyes widening as pain ebbed. Malin stared. By the old laws, she breathed. Elowen trembled, exhausted. I didn't mean to, she whispered. Cale cupped her cheek, reverent. You answered, he said. Outside, horns sounded again, nearer than ever. Cale rose slowly, strength returning, gaze hardening. They have seen you now, he said. There is no hiding. Elowen met his eyes, fear steadying into resolve. Then teach me, she said. Snow began to fall harder, sealing the crevice like a vow. Elowen sat beside the fire as Cale slept, her hands still faintly glowing where she had healed him. The light had faded, leaving only warmth and an ache behind her eyes. Around them, the wolves kept watch, their bodies relaxed but senses sharp, ears turning at every sound. Malin crouched opposite her, studying Elowen as if seeing her for the first time. That was no accident, Malin said quietly. Elowen shook her head. I don't understand what happened. Malin poked the fire, sparks rising. Understanding comes later, she replied. Survival comes first. Elowen's gaze drifted to Cale's chest, rising steadily now, the wound closed as if weeks had passed instead of minutes. Guilt twisted inside her. They'll keep coming, she said. Malin nodded. The council never releases what it can use. Elowen hugged her knees, cold seeping back in. I never wanted this, she whispered. Malin softened. None of us do, she said. Outside the den, snow whispered against stone, carrying distant echoes of horns fading but not gone, a reminder that danger slept lightly and would wake again before dawn broke. Kale stirred as if hearing his name in her thoughts. He sat up slowly, testing his strength, eyes finding Elowen at once. Relief crossed his face before he masked it. "You should rest," he said. Elowen stood instead, anger flaring. "You almost died," she snapped. "Because of me." Kale rose fully, towering but gentle. "Because of choice," he corrected. "Mine." She shook her head, tears threatening. "You didn't give me one." Silence settled, heavy. "You are right," he said at last. "I should have warned you what mercy cost in my world." He gestured to the wolves. "They follow strength, not cruelty. You showed them another kind." Elowen's voice wavered. "I'm not strong." Kyle stepped closer, careful, as if approaching something sacred. "You stood between spears and dying lives," he said. "You stayed when fear begged you to run." He met her eyes. "That is strength." Her breath caught. Outside, a wolf howled softly, not alarm, but acknowledgement. Elowen felt it settle inside her like a vow she had never spoken aloud, yet somehow already kept, without realizing when everything changed. Malin interrupted with a sharp whistle. "Enough," she said. "Training begins now." Elowen blinked. "Training for what?" Malin's smile was thin. "For being hunted." They moved to a wider chamber where ancient markings spiraled across the floor. Kale traced them with his boot. "This place remembers bonds," he said. "It amplifies truth." Elowen swallowed. "That sounds dangerous." "It is," Malin replied. Kale faced Elowen fully. "If you stay," he said, "the council will test you. They will try to break you." Elowen lifted her chin. "Then teach me not to break." Malin circled her. "Close your eyes," she ordered. Elowen obeyed. The air shifted, pressure building like a coming storm. "Think of the wolves," Malin said, "not as beasts, as lives." Elowen pictured frozen fur, glassy eyes, the first warmth returning. Heat bloomed in her chest. The runes glowed faintly. Kale's breath caught. "Again," Malin commanded. Elowen focused harder. The glow strengthened, humming through the stone. She cried out as energy surged, knocking her to her knees. Wolves howled, startled but not afraid. Malin crouched beside her, gripping her shoulders. "There," she said softly. "That's it." Elowen gasped, shaking. "What am I?" Malin answered honestly. "You are becoming necessary." The lesson ended abruptly when a scout wolf burst in, eyes bright with urgency. Malin straightened. "Speak." The wolf shifted, becoming a young man streaked with snow. "The council retreats to the Howling Crown," he said. "They prepare judgment." Kyle cursed under his breath. "They want witnesses," he said. Elowen looked between them. "Judgment for who?" Kale met her gaze. "For you," he said. The words hit like ice water. "Me?" she whispered. "For touching the crown," Malin said grimly. Elowen laughed weakly. "I didn't touch any crown." Kale's voice softened. "You touched me when I was sworn to it." Silence swallowed them. Elowen backed away. "Then I should leave," she said quickly. "I never wanted power." Kale stepped into her path. "Leaving will not save you," he said. "They will hunt you as an example." Her chest tightened. "Then what do you want from me?" she demanded. Kale held her gaze, unflinching. "Stand with us," he said. "Not behind." Wolves gathered, forming a circle. Elowen felt their attention, heavy and waiting. The fire crackled, casting long shadows that looked like crowns breaking and reforming again. Night deepened as plans were made. Malin laid out routes, signals, sacrifices. Elowen listened, overwhelmed. When it was done, Kale approached her quietly. "You can still choose," he said. She looked at the wolves, at Malin, at him. "If I stand with you," she asked, "what do I lose?" Kale did not lie. "Your old life," he said. "Your anonymity. Your safety." She nodded slowly. "And what do I gain?" He hesitated, then answered softly. "A voice." Elowen closed her eyes, remembering Hearthfens. Laughter, the chains, the cold indifference. She opened them again. steady. Then teach me to use it, she said. Cale bowed his head deeper than before. Outside, the wolves howled together, a sound that rolled through stone and snow, carrying far into the mountains. The howling crown answered faintly in return. Elowen felt the bond settle fully, irreversible now. Whatever she had been before the storm no longer mattered. She had chosen to stand where fate and fear collided, and the world would have to answer her choice. Morning arrived without sunlight, only a pale thinning of the dark that turned snow blue instead of black. Elowen woke stiff and sore, her body remembering power it had no name for yet. The den hummed quietly, wolves shifting, breath steady, watchful. Cale stood near the entrance, sharpening a blade that gleamed dull silver, his movements precise, controlled. When he noticed her awake, he set it aside at once. "We move soon," he said. Elowen pushed herself, upright, nerves buzzing. "To the Howling Crown?" He nodded. "They will expect us," he added, "but not as we intend to arrive." Malin entered, carrying a bundle of dark cloth. "You'll need this," she said, handing it to Elowen. Inside lay fitted leather, light but strong, worn smooth by use. "Armor?" Elowen asked. "Respect," Malin corrected. Elowen changed quickly, surprised by how naturally it fit, as if shaped with her in mind. When she stepped out, the wolves watched with quiet intensity. Cale's gaze lingered, something unreadable flickering across his face, before he looked away. Outside, the wind shifted, carrying the distant echo of drums from the south, steady and patient, counting down to something inevitable. They traveled hard and fast, avoiding open ridges, slipping through old paths etched into the mountains long before villages existed. Elowen struggled at first, lungs burning, but the wolves adjusted pace, guiding her, teaching without words. Cale stayed close, sometimes ahead, sometimes behind, always within reach. At a narrow crossing, he halted suddenly, raising a fist. Everyone froze. Below, smoke curled faintly from a ravine. "Scouts?" Malin murmured. Cale nodded. "Council marked." Elowen's stomach tightened. "Can we avoid them?" she asked. Cale studied the terrain. "No," he said, "but we can choose how we are seen." He turned to her. "You must decide something now." Elowen's pulse quickened. "What?" He gestured to the wolves. "If you hide, they will fight alone." His eyes met hers. "If you stand with us, they will follow your lead." Fear flared. "I don't know how." Cale's voice softened. "You already do." Elowen swallowed, then stepped forward into the open. The wind caught her hair. Below, shapes moved, startled. Wolves fanned out behind her, visible, unashamed. Cale moved to her side. Together, they descended, snow crunching loudly, deliberately announcing their presence to the watching world below. The scouts reacted instantly, horns lifting, blades flashing. One step forward, uncertainty flickering across his face as he took in Elowen standing at the front. "You," he said. "The girl." Elowen's hands shook, but she held his gaze. "I have a name," she said. The man sneered. "You have no standing." Cale's presence surged beside her, silent warning. Elowen lifted her chin. "I saved 15 lives," she said, voice carrying in the cold air. "If that means nothing to your council, then your laws are already broken." Murmurs rippled through the scouts. One faltered. Another raised his weapon. Before Call could move, Elowen stepped forward again, heart pounding. Heat bloomed in her chest, answering fear with clarity. The snow beneath her boots darkened, steaming faintly. The scouts froze, eyes widening. "We do not seek blood," she said, "but we will not kneel." Silence followed, thick and fragile. At last, the lead scout lowered his horn. "The council will judge you," he said, voice uncertain now. Elowen nodded once. "Then let them look at me when they do," she replied. The scouts backed away, retreating toward the ravine. When they were gone, Elowen's knees buckled. Kyle caught her instantly, steady hands grounding her. "You did well," he murmured. She laughed shakily. "I was terrified." He met her eyes. So were they. They pressed on, urgency renewed. By nightfall, the howling crown rose before them, a vast stone amphitheater carved into the mountain's heart, lit by blue fire that burned without smoke. Wolves gathered on the ridges, packs from every direction answering the call. Elowen stared, overwhelmed by the scale, the weight of eyes turning toward her. "This is where they decide fate," she whispered. Cale nodded. "And where it has gone wrong before." They entered the arena together. The council sat in a crescent of stone thrones, faces cold, Malvior, Ashkeld among them, bandaged and glaring, his gaze locked onto Elowen with thinly veiled hunger. "So," he said, voice echoing, "the savior arrives." Elowen felt fear rise, then steady. She stepped forward alone. "I didn't come to be praised," she said. "I came to end the hunt." Laughter rippled, brittle. Malvier leaned forward. "You think yourself powerful?" Elowen shook her head. "I think mercy should not be punished." The wolves growled softly, a unified sound. Cale watched from behind her, silent, allowing her the floor. Malvier's smile faded. "You challenge our order." Elowen met his gaze. "Your order failed first," she said, voice clear. The blue fires flared brighter, reacting to her words, as if the stone itself listened. The council argued, voices rising, accusing, fearful. Elowen stood through it, heart racing but steady, feeling the wolf's presence at her back like a living wall. At last, Malvier raised his hand. Silence snapped into place. "Enough," he said. "We will test her." Elowen stiffened. "How?" Malvier's eyes gleamed. "By bond," he said. "If she truly stands with wolves, let her face the trial." Murmurs surged, some shocked, some eager. Cale stepped forward sharply. "No," he said. "That trial kills." Malvier shrugged. "Then she should not have touched what she did not understand." Elowen inhaled slowly. "What is the trial?" she asked. Cale turned to her, horror flickering. "Elowen." She shook her head. "If this ends the hunt, I'll face it." Malvier smiled thinly. "At dawn," he said. "She enters the circle alone." The words echoed like a sentence. Wolves howled, distressed. Kyle took her hands, gripping tightly. "I will not let them take you," he said fiercely. Elowen squeezed back, surprising strength answering his. "You already taught me something," she said softly. "That fear decides nothing." Above them, the blue fires guttered, and the mountains seemed to lean closer, waiting to see if mercy could survive judgment. Dawn crept into the howling crown like a held breath, pale light spilling over stone and blue fire until the arena looked carved from ice and bone. Elowen stood at the edge of the circle, the ancient markings beneath her boots faintly warm as if aware of her weight. Wolves lined the upper ridges in silence, hundreds of eyes fixed on her. The council watched from their thrones, Malvier Ashkeld leaning forward with open anticipation. Kel stood restrained behind a barrier of light, jaw clenched so tight Elowen feared it might crack. She did not look at him long. If she did, she might falter. "Step forward," Malvier commanded. Elowen obeyed, heart hammering, breath steady by sheer will. The circle ignited, runes flaring blue-white, cutting her off from every exit. Cold slammed into her bones, deeper than winter, sharper than fear. She gasped, dropping to one knee. The trial had begun. Voices rose, not spoken, but felt, ancient and layered, pressing questions into her mind. Why did you stay? Why did you touch? Why did you choose? Elowen clenched her fists, images flooding back. Frozen wolves, laughter, chains, Cale bleeding in snow. "Because it was right," she whispered. The circle answered by tightening, pain flaring as if rejecting simplicity. Around her, the wolves stirred uneasily. Cale slammed a fist against the barrier, roaring her name into the stone. The pressure intensified, forcing Elowen flat onto the markings. Frost crept across her lashes. Memories not her own poured in, packs shattered by greed, alphas fall into pride, councils choosing power over lives. She screamed, sound torn from her throat, hands clawing at stone. "Stand," the voices demanded. Elowen shook violently. "I can't," she sobbed. The circle burned hotter. Somewhere beyond pain, something inside her answered. Not rage, not ambition. Memory of warmth shared, of bodies pressed together against death. Elowen dragged herself upright, shaking. "You don't get to decide who deserves mercy," she said hoarsely. The words rang, echoing far beyond the arena. The wolves howled as one, a sound of defiance. The circle flickered, uncertain. Malvier rose, alarm flashing. "Silence her!" he shouted. The voices surged again, pushing deeper, searching for weakness. Elowen felt them touch fear, loneliness, the ache of being unseen. Tears streamed down her face. "I was alone," she whispered, "and I still chose." The circle shuddered violently. Cracks raced across the stone. Kyle stared in shock as the barrier holding him faltered. The trial was not breaking her. It was changing. Light exploded outward. The circle's runes burned gold instead of blue, heat washing over the arena like dawn after endless night. Elowen screamed, not in pain, but release. Power surged through her, wild yet focused, answering her heartbeat. The voices fell silent, replaced by a deep stillness. Elowen stood at the center, glowing faintly, breath steady. The council recoiled. Malvier staggered back. "Impossible," he hissed. Kale tore free as the barrier shattered, sprinting toward her. Wolves leapt down into the arena, surrounding Elowen protectively. She swayed, strength draining fast. Kale reached her, catching her before she fell. "It's over," he whispered, awe and fear tangled. Elowen blinked up at him. "Did I pass?" He laughed once, breathless. "You rewrote it!" Malvier screamed in fury. "She is an abomination!" The wolf snarled, sound shaking stone. Elowen straightened in Kale's arms, turning toward the council. "You built a trial to break what you fear," she said, voice carrying without effort. It didn't. The gold light dimmed, settling into her like embers. The mountain rumbled softly, as if agreeing. Council members shifted, shaken. Some looked at Elowen with something like hope. Malvier alone burned with hatred, already calculating his next move as everything slipped from his control. Silence stretched, heavy with consequence. At last, an elder counselor rose slowly. "The trial has spoken," she said, voice unsteady. "The bond stands." Murmurs rippled. Kyle tightened his hold on Elowen, relief flooding him. Malvier slammed his fist on stone. "This is madness," he snarled. "We cannot be ruled by sentiment." Elowen stepped forward, gently freeing herself from Kale's arms. "Then don't be ruled," she said. "Be guided." Her gaze swept the arena, meeting eyes one by one. "Your laws forgot why they existed. To protect life. All life." Wolves lowered their heads in acknowledgement. The elder counselor bowed. "What do you ask?" Elowen swallowed, the weight of the moment pressing hard. "End the hunt," she said. "Release those imprisoned for mercy, and recognize Kale as alpha without condition." Gasps erupted. Kale froze. "Elowen," she turned to him. "You didn't choose the crown," she said softly, "but it chose you. Let it mean something better." Malvier laughed sharply. "You think words will bind us?" He reached into his cloak. Kale lunged too late. Malvier hurled a shard of blue flame toward Elowen. Time slowed. Elowen raised her hand on instinct. Gold light flared, absorbing the blast harmlessly. The arena shook. Wolves roared. Malvier stared in disbelief as the flame vanished. Fear finally broke his arrogance. He turned to flee. Stone rose from the floor, blocking his path, obeying Elowen without command. Guards seized Malvier as chaos erupted. The council shouted, divided, terrified. Elowen stood still, shaking, power ebbing fast. Kale moved to her side, steadying her. "You shouldn't have had to do that," he murmured. She smiled weakly. "Neither should you have bled for mercy." The elder counselor raised her staff. "Enough," she called. "The mountain has judged." She looked at Elowen with reverence. "You are no Omega," she said. "You are a bond-bearer." Elowen frowned faintly. I don't want titles. The elder nodded. Then you may be the first to refuse them. Wolves laughed in low huffs. Kyle bowed deeply before Elowen, shocking the arena. My life, my crown, my pack, he said. Yours, if you will have them. Elowen's breath caught. She reached for his hands. I didn't save you to own you, she said gently. He met her gaze, fierce and tender. Nor did I offer to be owned, he replied. I offered to stand with you. Around them, the howling crown echoed with a sound not heard in generations. Approval born not of fear, but choice. Snow began to fall through the open sky, soft and cleansing, as the world shifted towards something new. Snow fell softly inside the howling crown as order returned in uneven waves. Elowen stood near the center, knees weak, watching guards drag Malvier away, while counselors argued in shaken voices. Power drained from her limbs, leaving cold and exhaustion behind. Kyle stayed close without touching, his presence a steady wall she leaned against without realizing. Wolves settled along the stone tiers, tails still, eyes bright, waiting. The elder counselor raised her staff again, demanding silence, and slowly it came. She declared the hunt ended, the prisons open, the old laws suspended until dawn. Relief rippled through the packs like breath released after drowning. Elowen swallowed hard, emotions tangling painfully. She had wanted safety, not upheaval. Kale leaned closer, voice low. He warned her the council's promise was fragile, bound by fear and witnesses. If she stayed visible, they would hesitate. If she vanished, they would regroup. Elowen looked at the wolves, at the frightened counselors, at the vast stone carved by history. She realized mercy required staying present longer than courage alone. The weight pressed heavier as understanding dawned. Quiet, unavoidable, and permanent, reshaping her sense of responsibility, belonging, and the cost of choosing kindness publicly for everyone involved. After the assembly dispersed, Elowen was guided into a narrow chamber overlooking the arena. Blue fire dimmed to embers beyond the archway. Malin followed, expression unreadable. She closed the stone door and finally exhaled. Elowen sank onto a bench, hands shaking uncontrollably. Kale remained standing, as if sitting might signal surrender. Malin broke the silence, saying the council would fracture by nightfall. Some feared Elowen, others saw salvation. None trusted Malvier again. Elowen asked what happened to those imprisoned. Malin promised release before sunset, under guard. The answer eased something tight inside Elowen's chest. Kale knelt before her then, startling them both, and apologized for bringing danger into her life. Elowen surprised herself by laughing weakly, saying danger had found her long before wolves. She admitted fear of staying, fear of leaving, fear of becoming a symbol instead of a person. Kale listened without interrupting, eyes steady. When she finished, he said symbols could still choose how gently they stood. His calm did not erase her terror, but it gave it edges, shape, something she could hold without drowning, and that fragile control felt like the first real gift of power she had never expected to receive from anyone else. By afternoon, messengers arrived from distant ridges, carrying news of open cells and disarmed patrols. The howling crown buzzed with uneasy hope. Elowen stood beside Kale on a high balcony, watching wolves reunite, bodies pressed together in relief. She felt like an intruder at joy she had triggered, but not earned. Kale sensed it, telling her belonging was not transactional. Below, Malin coordinated supplies and routes, her voice sharp, effective. Elowen asked Kale what would happen next. He explained the council would demand structure, answers, boundaries. Some would push for her removal once attention faded. He said the safest path was swift departure to the frostbound den, beyond council reach. Elowen hesitated. Leaving felt like abandonment. Staying felt like martyrdom. She asked Kale what he wanted. He answered honestly, to rebuild without fear, with her consent, or without her presence. The choice stung and steadied her. Elowen watched the horizon and decided she would not be hidden, but she would not rule. She would walk with the pack and learn. The decision settled quietly, not triumphant, but firm, shaped by humility, resolve, and a promise to protect life without demanding obedience or crowns from anyone anywhere ever again going forward. Preparations moved quickly. Elowen packed little, keeping her cloak and the leather Malin had given her. Khal issued quiet orders, delegating with care, ensuring prisoners were escorted safely, witnesses placed strategically. Malvier was bound for exile, stripped of authority. When the sun dipped low, the pack gathered at the eastern gate. Elowen addressed them without rehearsing, voice carrying simply. She thanked them for trusting her and promised no commands, only cooperation. Murmurs answered, warm and approving. Khal stepped forward and formally declined the council's immediate coronation, declaring intent to rebuild beyond the crown. Gasps followed, then howls of approval. Elowen felt pride twist with fear. As they departed, counselors watched silently, some relieved, some resentful. The mountain path opened, familiar and new. Elowen walked at the center, wolves flanking, Khal beside her. She felt eyes still watching from stone, but the weight had changed. The world would test this choice soon. For now, snow fell gently, blessing departure without erasing the scars behind them. Each step forward carried uncertainty, but also relief, because she no longer walked alone, and because Mercy had finally been allowed to move instead of kneel before power ever again tried to silence. Kindness everywhere forever. They left the howling crown as night returned, stars emerging cold and bright. The frostbound den awaited, not as refuge, but as beginning. Elowen felt exhaustion settled deep, yet hope stayed awake. Khal matched her pace, occasionally glancing over, as if confirming she was real. She asked quietly if he regretted meeting her. He answered just as quietly that he regretted a world where Mercy needed bravery. Elowen smiled, small and sincere. Ahead, wolves howled, not in warning, but welcome. The sound rolled through valleys, carrying news of change. Elowen breathed it in, knowing challenges remained. Councils would scheme, old wounds would ache, fear would return, but something fundamental had shifted. She had saved 15 wolves from freezing to death, never knowing one was the Alpha King. In doing so, she had saved herself from silence. As snow covered their tracks, Elowen stepped into the future without a crown, without chains, bound instead by choice, compassion, and the quiet strength of standing where others once turned away. The path ahead would be hard and human, but she would walk it awake, carrying warmth forward, refusing to let the cold decide who deserved to live when fear tried again and failed. The frostbound den revealed itself at dawn, a hollow carved deep into the mountain where ice curved like cathedral glass and warmth pulsed from hidden springs. Elowen stepped inside and felt the air change, heavier, alive, humming faintly beneath her boots. Wolves spread out, settling with familiar ease, while others stood guard along the upper ledges. Khal paused beside her, expression tense. "This place remembers alphas," he said, "and challenges them." Elowen frowned. "Challenges how?" He did not answer before a horn echoed from the pass, sharp and deliberate. Malin swore under her breath. "Too soon," she muttered. Scouts rushed in with grim faces. "The council marches?" one said. "Not all of them." "Enough." Elowen's stomach dropped. "They broke their word." Kale's jaw tightened. "They delayed it," he corrected. "They want blood without witnesses." The den rumbled softly, reacting to the threat like a waking beast. Elowen felt heat stir again inside her chest, answering danger with clarity. "Then they'll find us standing," she said. Khal studied her, pride and fear warring openly. "This will not be a trial," he warned. "This will be war." Elowen met his gaze steadily. "Then we protect lives first," she replied. Outside, horns multiplied, echoing through stone, announcing that Mercy would be tested by force at last. They prepared in silence, broken only by swift orders and shifting stone. Wolves took positions along narrow approaches, using the mountain itself as ally. Elowen stood with Malin near the inner ring, hands trembling despite her resolve. "You don't have to fight," Malin said. Elowen shook her head. "I won't kill," she replied, "but I won't hide." Cale moved among the pack, voice calm, steadying fear without inflaming it. When he returned, he placed a hand over Elowen's heart briefly, grounding her. "Stay near the spring," he said. "If they breach, run." She grabbed his wrist. "And you?" He smiled grimly. "I hold the line." The first clash came like thunder. Steel rang against stone. Wolves lunged from shadows, disarming, driving attackers back. The council's soldiers responded with blue fire, blasting ice apart. Elowen cried out as heat surged from her hands, instinctively reinforcing cracked walls, sealing gaps. She gasped, stunned. "I didn't mean—" "You answered," Malin said sharply. The den glowed gold where Elowen touched it, stone hardening, pathways shifting. The attackers faltered, confused by the mountain turning against them. But more poured in, relentless. Elowen felt strain bite deep, vision blurring. This power demanded cost. She could feel it now, draining warmth from her bones with every choice she made to protect instead of flee. The breach came at the eastern throat. A surge of blue fire shattered the last barrier, spilling soldiers into the den. Kyle met them head-on, power exploding outward, throwing bodies back. Elowen watched him fight, heart tearing, knowing he could not hold forever. She stepped forward, ignoring Malin's shout. "Stop!" she cried. Her voice carried unnaturally, cutting through chaos. Soldiers hesitated. Elowen stood between lines, hands raised, shaking but resolute. "This ends now," she said. Malvier's lieutenant emerged, sneering. "You think yourself untouchable," he said. Elowen shook her head. "I think killing me will change nothing." The lieutenant lunged anyway, blade flashing. Time slowed. Elowen felt something break open fully inside her, not violently, but like a door finally unbarred. Gold light poured outward, not burning, but pushing, separating bodies, forcing distance. The lieutenant slammed into stone, unconscious. Silence fell in a widening ring. Elowen staggered, knees buckling. Cale reached her, catching her just as she collapsed. "Elowen," he whispered, terror naked now. She smiled faintly. "I'm still here." Around them, soldiers dropped weapons, fear finally outweighing orders. Wolves growled, holding position, awaiting command that did not come. The mountain quieted, power settling back into its bones. Elowen's breath came shallow. She realized dimly she had nothing left to give. Cale lifted her carefully, turning toward the remaining counselors at the entrance. "Leave," he commanded, voice absolute, "or be remembered as the ones who broke the mountain." They hesitated, then retreated, dragging wounded with them. The horns sounded retreat, sharp and panicked. When the echoes faded, Kyle sank to his knees, cradling Elowen. "Stay with me," he pleaded, voice breaking. Wolves gathered close, pressing warmth around them. Elowen's vision dimmed, edges softening. She reached up weakly, touching his cheek. "You stood," she whispered. "That matters." Tears slid free, freezing on his lashes. "So do you," he said fiercely. Malin knelt, checking Elowen's pulse. "She's alive," she said, relief flooding her voice. Exhausted, drained. Cale bowed his head over Elowen's hand, breathing her in like air after drowning. The den hummed softly, gold light flickering faintly around Elowen's body, as if the mountain itself refused to let her go. Outside, snow fell harder, covering blood and broken weapons alike. The war had ended not with conquest, but collapse. Mercy had survived again, barely, and at terrible cost. Elowen woke briefly as they carried her deeper into the den, aware of warmth and voices, of Call's steady heartbeat beneath her ear. She wanted to tell him something important, but the words slipped away. Darkness claimed her gently this time, without fear. Cale followed, until stone sealed behind them, then turned back to the pack. His voice carried, low and unwavering. "This ends tonight," he said. "No more councils ruling through fear." Wolves answered in solemn agreement. The frostbound den glowed softly, reshaping itself, not as fortress, but sanctuary. Cale returned to Elowen's side, holding her hand, promising silently that if she woke, the world would be different, and if she didn't, he would make it so anyway. Elowen woke to quiet warmth and the slow rhythm of breathing that was not her own. For a moment she thought she was dreaming, wrapped in heavy furs, listening to water murmur nearby. Then, memory returned gently instead of crashing. Gold light, shouting, Cale's voice breaking. She opened her eyes. The frostbound den glowed softly, walls veined with living warmth, not fire, but something steadier. Cale sat beside her, head bowed, hands clasped as if holding the world together by will alone. When he noticed her stirring, he froze, then looked up. Relief hit his face so fiercely it stole Elowen's breath. "You're awake," he whispered, afraid to speak louder. She smiled weakly. "Still here," she murmured. He laughed once, rough and unguarded, then pressed his forehead to her hand, exhaling shakily. Wolves watched from the edges, tails thumping softly against stone. Elowen felt different, emptied and full at once, like a vessel washed clean and refilled with purpose. "Did we win?" she asked. Cale lifted his head, eyes bright. "We ended it," he said. "The council fled. The hunt is over." Elowen closed her eyes briefly, relief loosening something tight inside her chest. When she opened them again, she saw the future waiting, quiet and heavy with responsibility. Recovery was slow. Elowen learned her limits the hard way, dizziness and trembling reminding her she was still human. Cale stayed close, never hovering, always present. Malin checked on her daily, offering blunt reassurance and sharper warnings. "Power like yours listens," she said. "It will answer what you feed it." Elowen took that seriously, choosing rest over pride. As days passed, messengers arrived with news. Packs once scattered returned. Prisoners freed under council decree spread word of the bond-bearer who stopped a war. Some feared her, others hoped. Elowen listened to it all, overwhelmed. "I don't want to rule," she told Cale one evening as they watched snow drift through the den's upper opening. "Good," he replied softly. "Neither do I." She turned to him, surprised. He met her gaze. "I will lead the pack," he said, "but I will not be king the old way." Elowen nodded slowly. "Then I'll walk beside you," she said, "not above." The decision settled easily between them, not dramatic, just right. Wolves gathered that night, forming a circle around them, not kneeling, but standing. Choice, not command. The den seemed to breathe easier, as if relieved by the simplicity of it. When the council sent envoys, Elowen faced them without ceremony. She wore no crown, only her cloak and leather. Cale stood beside her, silent and imposing. The envoys spoke carefully, offering treaties, boundaries, cautious respect. Elowen listened, then spoke plainly. "There will be no more hunts," she said. "No trials built to break compassion." One envoy bristled. "And if others like you rise?" Elowen met his gaze calmly. "Then your laws will finally match your world." Silence followed, heavy but not hostile. The envoys left with fewer demands than they brought. Outside, wolves howled approval, echoing through valleys newly free of fear. Later, Elowen walked alone along the den's spring, watching steam curl upward. She felt the bond inside her now, quiet and steady, no longer flaring without control. It responded to care, to intention. She smiled faintly, understanding at last. Mercy was not weakness because it required vigilance. It demanded presence. That was its cost, and she accepted it willingly, knowing the alternative was a colder world she refused to live in again. The first winter without the hunt passed quietly. Villages adjusted. Wolves roamed without hiding. Fear lingered, but it no longer ruled. Elowen traveled often, sometimes with Kyle, sometimes alone, healing where she could, listening more than speaking. Children stared at her with awe. Elders watched with caution. She greeted both the same. Kyle proved a different kind of leader, firm but fair, unwilling to bend to cruelty disguised as tradition. Some challenged him. None succeeded, not because of strength alone, but because the pack trusted him, and because Elowen stood with him, reminding them what they fought to protect. One evening, as they stood on a ridge watching stars emerge, Kale spoke quietly. "You changed everything," he said. Elowen shook her head. "We did," she replied. He smiled, accepting the correction. Snow fell lightly, peaceful, now. Wolves played below, their laughter like huffs echoing. Elowen felt something close to happiness settle in her chest. Fragile but real, not a fairy tale, a life. Built slowly, guarded fiercely. That was enough. Years later, stories would soften the truth. They would say the Omega was chosen by fate, that the Alpha King fell in love at first sight, that magic solved what fear could not. Elowen knew better. She knew it began with cold hands, bleeding knees, and a choice made when no one was watching. She had saved 15 wolves from freezing to death, never knowing one was the Alpha King. In doing so, she had reminded a world what it meant to belong. As the frostbound den glowed warmly against another winter night, Elowen stood beside Kale, watching snow fall gently, unafraid. The world was still imperfect, but it was alive, and this time, Mercy was no longer alone. If this story moved you even a little, don't forget to like and subscribe for more powerful stories like this. Share it with someone who believes kindness still matters in a cold world. Drop a comment and tell me what part of Elowen's journey stayed with you the most. And if you want the next story, even darker, deeper, and more unforgettable, you already know what to do. Until next time, stay warm, stay kind, and keep choosing mercy.